There's a specific kind of restlessness that's hard to explain to people who don't feel it. It's not ambition in the conventional sense. It's not dissatisfaction with what you have. It's the persistent sensation that ordinary life, the default path most people follow contentedly, feels somehow too small for you, like you're living in a space designed for someone else's dimensions, and no matter how you arrange things, you can't quite fit. If you've spent your life feeling this way, Carl Jung identified exactly why it happens. And it's not because you're ungrateful, unrealistic, or impossible to satisfy. It's because of how your mind is wired to perceive reality. Deep intuitives, those who correspond to the INFJ, INTJ, INFP, and INTP personality types, don't just want different things than other people. They experience a fundamentally different relationship with possibility, meaning, and depth that makes conventional life structures feel constrictive in ways that are difficult to articulate without sounding arrogant or entitled. But here's what most people miss. This isn't about thinking you're better than ordinary life. It's about being cognitively wired for dimensions that ordinary life simply doesn't operate in. And Jung recognized this as one of the defining challenges of the intuitive type, the chronic mismatch between internal scope and external options. Stay with me in this video because I'm going to show you the 5 specific reasons why ordinary life feels too small when you're wired this way, and more importantly, how to expand your life to match your actual internal dimensions without abandoning responsibility or becoming impossibly idealistic. This isn't permission to reject everything, it's understanding why the friction exists and what to do about it. The first reason ordinary life feels too small is what I call the depth-breadth mismatch. Most people are satisfied with breadth, variety, novelty, surface-level engagement across many areas. They enjoy trying new restaurants, traveling to new places, meeting new people, consuming new content. And this creates genuine satisfaction for them because their attention is oriented toward the concrete, present, and varied. Deep intuitives are wired differently. They don't get the same satisfaction from breadth. What nourishes them is depth, the ability to go deeper and deeper into something until they reach layers that most people never access. A subject they can explore for years and still find new dimensions. A relationship where conversation goes beyond pleasant exchange into genuine psychological territory. A problem complex enough to require their full cognitive apparatus. When ordinary life offers breadth but not depth, it feels like eating food that has no nutritional value. You can consume endlessly without ever feeling nourished. You can be busy without ever feeling engaged. You can have a full schedule without ever experiencing the state of flow that comes from deep immersion. Jung observed this in his work on intuitive types, noting that they need what he called psychological space, room to explore ideas, possibilities, and meanings at depths that concrete reality doesn't naturally provide. Without this depth dimension, they experience a specific form of starvation that's invisible to people who are satisfied with surface variety. This is why deep intuitives often feel isolated even in busy social lives, bored even with objectively interesting activities, and restless even when they have everything that's supposed to create satisfaction. The dimension they need, depth, isn't present in most of what ordinary life offers. And this leads directly to the second reason ordinary life feels too small. Stay with me. The second reason is the meaning deficit. Deep intuitives don't just do things, they need to understand why those things matter in a larger context. Every action, every choice, every commitment gets filtered through an unconscious question. What does this mean? How does this connect to something significant? What purpose does this serve beyond the immediate? This isn't overthinking, it's how their minds naturally orient toward information. While sensing types can engage with concrete tasks for their own sake, the satisfaction of completion, the tangible result, the immediate reward, Intuitive types need the task to connect to something larger or it feels meaningless. And here's the problem: most of ordinary life is not designed around meaning. It's designed around maintenance, obligation, social convention, and immediate necessity. Pay the bills, attend the meeting, make small talk, follow the process, complete the transaction. None of these are inherently meaningful. They're functional, and for people who can engage with functionality for its own sake, this is fine. But for deep intuitives, functionality without meaning creates a specific psychological emptiness. This is why they struggle with conventional career paths, even when those paths are objectively successful. Why they feel exhausted by social obligations, even when the events are pleasant. Why they resist routines, even when those routines would make life easier. The meaning layer is missing, and without it, everything feels like going through motions. Jung wrote about this as the intuitive's need for symbolic significance, the requirement that actions connect to larger patterns of meaning, not just immediate outcomes. When ordinary life offers only immediate outcomes, it feels like living in a world without a vertical dimension. Everything is horizontal, transactional, disconnected from depth. But there's a third reason that might be even more suffocating for deep intuitives. Keep watching. The third reason ordinary life feels too small is the complexity craving that most people don't have. Here's something that sounds strange to people who aren't wired this way. Deep intuitives are often more engaged by complex problems than by simple solutions. While most people experience relief when something becomes easy, deep intuitives can experience something closer to disappointment. This isn't masochism, it's that their cognitive wiring is optimized for complexity processing. Their minds are built to hold multiple variables, track interdependencies, navigate ambiguity, and synthesize disparate information into coherent understanding. When problems are simple, this entire apparatus sits idle, and that idleness feels like cognitive suffocation. Ordinary life is designed to be as simple as possible. Streamlined processes, clear instructions, established protocols, predictable outcomes. This is good design for most people. It reduces cognitive load and creates efficiency. But for deep intuitives, it creates understimulation. It's like asking someone who's trained for complex orchestral music to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for 8 hours a day. Technically they can do it, but it doesn't engage their actual capabilities. And over time, that lack of engagement becomes psychologically depleting. This is why deep intuitives are often drawn to fields that others find overwhelming: philosophy, systems design, strategic planning, theoretical work, complex problem solving. Not because these are more prestigious, but because they're more engaging. The complexity matches their processing capacity. And when ordinary life offers primarily simple, repetitive, or straightforward tasks, they experience what psychologists call cognitive underutilization, the frustration of having capabilities that have no outlet, the feeling that they could be operating at a much higher level if only the problems were worthy of their actual processing power. Jung himself described this experience in his conversations with Dr. Richard Evans. Speaking about introverted intuitives specifically, he said, "But if the introvert is intuitive, to him that is hell, because as soon as he is in a definite situation, he tries to find a hole where he can get out. To him, every given situation is just the worst that can happen to him. He is pinched and feels he is caught, suffocated, chained." This is the feeling of being trapped in simplicity when you're wired for complexity. The ordinary, defined, predictable situation isn't comfort, it's confinement. But we're not done. There's a fourth reason that explains why even objectively good lives can feel constrictive to these minds. Stay with me. The fourth reason ordinary life feels too small is how deep intuitives perceive potential. Most people perceive reality as what is. They see the present situation, assess it accurately, and respond to what's actually there. This is practical, grounded, and functional. Deep intuitives perceive reality as what could be. When they look at any situation, a relationship, a project, an organization, their own life, They don't just see what currently exists. They automatically perceive the potential embedded in it, what it could become, what's possible but not yet actualized, the better version that's latent in the current form. This is the intuitive function that Jung identified, perception of possibilities and potentialities rather than concrete present facts. And while this creates their capacity for innovation and vision, it also creates a chronic gap between what is and what could be. When they look at ordinary life, they don't just see a stable job, a nice home, pleasant relationships, and comfortable routines. They see all the unrealized potential, the conversations that could go deeper but don't, the work that could be more meaningful but isn't, the life that could be richer, more complex, more significant, but remains locked in conventional form. And this creates a perpetual dissatisfaction that's difficult to explain. From the outside, they have a good life. From the inside, they're constantly aware of the gap between what is and what could be. And that gap feels like living in a smaller version of the life that's actually possible. This isn't about perfectionism or impossible standards. It's about perceiving a dimension, potential, that most people don't consistently register. And once you can see it, you can't unsee it. Every situation carries this awareness of latent possibility, and ordinary life, by definition, is built on actualizing the conventional rather than the possible. But there's one more reason, and it might be the most difficult to navigate. Keep watching. The fifth reason ordinary life feels too small is the authenticity requirement that deep intuitives can't override. Most people can engage with things they don't find genuinely meaningful or interesting if there's sufficient external reason, social expectation, financial necessity, obligation, conventional wisdom. They can participate in activities, relationships, or work that doesn't deeply resonate with them and still experience them as acceptable because the external justification is enough. Deep intuitives struggle with this in a way that can make them seem difficult or impractical. It's not that they don't understand external reasons. It's that their minds can't generate genuine engagement without internal alignment. They can't fake interest. They can't perform enthusiasm. They can't sustain participation in things that feel inauthentic to their internal experience. This is connected to how the intuitive function works. It's oriented toward internal patterns, meanings, and authentic resonance rather than external concrete reality. When there's a mismatch between external expectation and internal reality, the intuitive can't just override their internal experience to meet the external demand. So they sit through conversations that everyone else seems to enjoy and feel completely disconnected. They attempt careers that look perfect on paper but experience them as psychologically suffocating. They try to participate in ordinary social rituals and feel like they're acting in a play rather than living authentically. And ordinary life is full of things that require this kind of participation: small talk, conventional socializing, standard career paths, expected life milestones, culturally approved activities. None of these are bad, but they require the ability to engage without deep internal alignment, and that's precisely what deep intuitives can't do sustainably. Jung called this the intuitive's peculiar aloofness from the object. They can't fully invest in external concrete reality unless it resonates with internal meaning and possibility. And when ordinary life is primarily composed of external concrete expectations, it feels like being asked to live in a language you don't speak. So now you understand why ordinary life feels too small. It's not one thing, it's the combination of needing depth in a breadth-oriented world, requiring meaning in a functionality-focused culture, craving complexity in streamlined systems, perceiving potential that isn't being actualized, and needing authenticity in environments built on convention. The question is, what do you do about it? Here's what doesn't work: rejecting ordinary life entirely. The fantasy is often to abandon everything conventional and pursue only what feels deeply meaningful, complex, and aligned. But this usually leads to impracticality, isolation, and the discovery that even meaningful pursuits have ordinary maintenance requirements. What works is expansion rather than rejection, finding ways to add the dimensions that ordinary life lacks without abandoning the structure that provides stability. The first expansion strategy is to create depth channels. You don't need every aspect of life to provide depth. You need specific areas where depth is available and protected. This might be one relationship where real conversation happens, one intellectual pursuit you engage with seriously, one creative project that allows complexity, one area of work where you can go as deep as your mind wants to go. Stop trying to make everything meaningful and instead concentrate depth where it can actually exist. Let some things be functional maintenance while you invest your real psychological energy in the areas that can sustain depth. The second expansion strategy is to reframe meaning. You can't make meaningless things meaningful, but you can often find the meaning dimension in apparently mundane activities by connecting them to larger contexts. The routine work that funds the meaningful work. The social obligations that maintain relationships that matter. The maintenance tasks that create the stability required for depth pursuits. This isn't justification or rationalization. It's recognizing that meaning often exists in how things connect to what matters, not in the things themselves. The third expansion strategy is to seek complexity at the appropriate scale. You don't need your entire life to be complex. You need problems and projects that match your processing capacity. This might mean taking on strategic roles, advisory positions, research projects, creative challenges, or systemic problems that actually require the kind of thinking you do naturally. Stop trying to make simple things interesting and instead position yourself where genuine complexity exists and is valued. The fourth expansion strategy is to act on potential selectively. You can't actualize all potential, but you can identify the specific potentials worth pursuing and focus there. Not every possibility needs to be realized, but the ones that genuinely matter to you deserve real investment. This means getting comfortable with leaving most potential unrealized so you can actually actualize what matters most. The restlessness decreases when you're actively working on something meaningful rather than just perceiving all the things that could be but aren't. The fifth expansion strategy is to build authentic microsystems. You can't make the entire culture authentic, but you can create specific relationships, communities, and contexts where authenticity is the norm rather than performance. These become your psychological home base, the places where you don't have to translate yourself or perform normalcy. This might be a small friend group, an online community, a creative collaboration, or a professional network where depth is expected and valued. The existence of these spaces makes participating in conventional spaces more tolerable because you're not trying to get all your psychological needs met everywhere. Here's the truth. Ordinary life will always feel somewhat small if you're wired for depth, meaning complexity, potential, and authenticity. That's not a problem to solve, it's a reality to work with. The goal isn't to make ordinary life feel big enough. The goal is to build a life that has both ordinary and extraordinary dimensions, stability and depth, functionality and meaning, simplicity and complexity, present reality and future possibility, convention and authenticity. You're not broken for feeling that ordinary life is too small. You're accurately perceiving that your internal dimensions don't match the default external structures. And Jung understood this. He recognized that intuitive types would always experience this mismatch and that the answer wasn't to force themselves into smaller versions of life, but to consciously expand life to match their actual scope. The world needs people who can't settle for surface-level engagement, who require meaning, who crave complexity, who perceive potential, who demand authenticity, because those are the people who push culture, knowledge, systems, and understanding beyond the conventional into new territory. Your restlessness isn't a flaw. It's a signal that you're built for dimensions that ordinary structures don't provide. The question isn't how to make yourself fit into ordinary life. It's how to expand your life to include the dimensions you actually need. If this resonates, leave a comment about which of the 5 reasons hits hardest for you: the depth deficit, the meaning requirement, the complexity craving, the potential perception, or the authenticity demand. If you want more content that validates the deep intuitive experience without pathologizing it, hit subscribe and share this with someone who's been feeling too big for the life they're living. Because the real tragedy isn't that ordinary life feels too small. It's spending your entire life trying to make yourself smaller instead of building a life that matches your actual dimensions.